Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. Pollution. Nobody likes it. We have made strides in the Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic world in pushing back the pollution produced not only by our power plants, but in our daily life. We're not perfect yet. If you don't believe me, go out on a McDonald's lot any given day. And despite the fact they have employees dedicated to it, there's junk lying all over the place. When you actually look at world statistics and world maps, you discover two interesting things. 80% of carbon dioxide and other pollutants in the atmosphere come from Asia. That includes Southern Asia, that includes Eastern Asia. 80% of the plastic that winds up in the various seas comes from Asia. From Russia all the way across to the Indus Valley area. Those are the rivers that channel most of the plastic into the oceans. There's an article today on how Europe is sending its trash to Vietnam, and Vietnam is basically putting it in a pile and leaving it there. When the environmental treaties were being authorized, places like China and India made the point that it wasn't fair that their economies were developing and the Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic nations had already developed their economies and they needed a chance to catch up. Well, at first I thought that argument had merit to it. I'm stepping away from that argument very quickly. Because, kind of like Germany and Japan after World War II, they didn't go back and build World War I technology. They built 1950s technology. They had the best assembly lines they could get. They put together the best products they could get. That accounts for their prosperities from the 60s until now. Whereas China and India have chosen to go back to coal, to fuels that are really not efficient when they had a chance to jump on the solar bandwagon, to jump on the wind turbine bandwagon, to jump on the nuclear bandwagon. It's no secret India's had nuclear weapons capability since the 1970s. And if you can build a weapon, a reactor's not far behind. China's had it since the 60s, so they could have been the first nuclear nations. And then they wouldn't be putting out so many pollutants into the atmosphere. But it's cheaper to burn coal. Why? Because each country sets up its own regulations on what kind of air quality they're going to allow themselves to have. This has led to the modern system where companies and countries get carbon credits. This has been a shaky idea in my mind since they proposed it. It doesn't make sense how they're distributed. It's not done, well, partially done by population, partially done by how wealthy you are, and partially your industrial base. The problem with carbon credits is it goes right back to the point I've made 1,000 times on this channel. I'm not even sure if I'm exaggerating there. But the problem is carbon credits, the money goes into a big slush fund, and it's not being used to clean up anything. There's examples of the government cleaning stuff up, but that's an individual government. In Nova Scotia, they had a coal mine, and yeah, they basically destroyed the area around it. The Canadian government put up the money to rebuild that site to something approaching okay. The Halifax Harbor in Nova Scotia is so polluted, they spent $50 million on it. Halifax Harbor is not big. especially compared to, oh, was it Chesapeake Bay, Virginia, and places like that. But Halifax, unfortunately, has had ships sailing into it since the 1500s. I don't remember the exact date, which I should probably be ashamed of, but there's certain things in history you just lose track of. So that's literally 500 years of garbage of people throwing stuff in the water. And let's not forget all the ammunition and stuff used for the various wars. $50 million, dollars, and that water will never be clean enough to drink and never be clean enough to go swimming in. So basically, it's a band aid. Did Canada get any help from the United Nations, carbon credits, or anything else to clean it up? No. They had to spend the money themselves. We have so many, I believe in the United States they call them Superfund sites, that are so tragically polluted that they're never going to go away. I was relatively young when this happened, before 18. I gotta guess 16. And we were going somewhere in the United States, and my parents had their roadmap all figured out. I was just happy to be along for the ride. We were somewhere in the southern states. I don't want to tell you where, because again, I don't remember. We were in a car, we were on a highway, and I remember at the side of the road, there was a sign that said, "Do not stop for the next 60 miles, whatever it was." Long enough to be noticeable. And the reason I noticed it is because most of the time you see the sign, "No gas station for the next however many miles." And that was a common thing. Understandable. There's nobody there. You don't want to build the infrastructure. Hey, I'm cool with that. But do not stop. And I asked my parents, and they said, because they did all sorts of nuclear tests and stuff out here, that's why you can't stop in this area. And I don't think we were in Arizona or Nevada, but one of those other fun places they decided would look better with mushroom clouds. And that would have been about 40 years after those things went off, and it was still polluted. I wonder if they've ever bothered to clean it up. But that's not covered under the carbon tax. We need a nuclear tax too. But we'll get to that later. Why are we fining these governments that are not a significant source or are less than 10% of the source of hydrocarbon pollution, and not fining the people and the companies that are? We all know that that company, named after the fruit, outsources a lot of stuff to China, India, etc. The exact same places where labor is cheap, worker safety is dead cheap, and pollution controls are virtually non-existent. Strangely, same countries that are emitting all these pollutants and not cleaning up after themselves. Why is political pressure not being brought to bear? Why, for that matter, are the restrictions that are being put in place around the world being suspended for these countries so that way they can, quote, catch up, end quote, to the rest of the world? China's one of those weird examples where a few people live very well, a great deal live in conditions that Charles Dickens would have looked down and said, "Ooh, you can't let people leave. You can't leave people like that." Probably Darwin and Dickens both. It's just inhuman what these people put up with to make a little bit of money for their daily bread. But we allow this to happen, and we tax ourselves for the privilege of sending stuff overseas to where all the pollution happens. Now, the problem that you have, China's an authoritarian economy and an authoritarian dictatorship. Whereas over here, we're Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic nations. That democratic part is the problem. Because let's be honest, everybody likes a bargain. You know what the funny thing is about people that get a bargain? They can't shut up about it. Oh, check this out. I got this, you know, DVD set or whatever it is, all the episodes of Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda, $5. Bargain, eh? Check this out. I brewed my own beer. Cost me $20 less than it would have at the store. Bargain, eh? Yeah. And that attitude has got to change. We have to start worrying about sustainability. I have in my possession, it's a knife, fork, and napkin set. Now, the funny part about it is I don't know anything about it. I don't know where I got it. Now, this is in a paper wrapper, which is very nice. Um, the country I live in is one of the world's major softwood exporters. So, is this a Canadian product? Don't know. Is it a product from the United States? Don't know. There's no markings on it saying made in X. There's nothing that says this is made by X corporation. And while I don't typically have a lot of need for knife, fork, and napkin in my office, I apparently carried it up here for some reason. I don't know what that reason is. No matter the case, it's here. I would love to support that company because, like I said, everything in it is recyclable. Although recycling is an illusion. A lot of stuff that you put in the recycling does wind up in the dumpster anyway. But we're still not clogging our rivers and lakes and all that stuff to the same level they are in the East. Not the Middle East, the East. Asia proper. We need a visionary, and it can't be 188 nations sitting around a table bickering about every stupid thing. We think they should have fewer credits. Well, we think they should not have invaded us in 1804. That's unfortunately the problem with having a pseudo-democratic society like the United Nations. And we're going to keep getting these studies that don't focus on things like where is the pollution coming from? Wouldn't you think that would be part of the scientific process? Hey, I've discovered this new thing. Okay, where did you find it? Should be one of the first questions. No. They just put a tax in on top of the entire world and negotiate it through some pretty weird means, and we're just expected to live with it. Why is this considered okay? No other field of science or research does this. Once again, I want to remind you, Silverlight stands for the environment. Silverlight has spent days going around parks and stuff and pathways and stuff, just picking up the stuff that's been thrown out on my own time because it's annoying. And I'm not trying to say here everybody should have the right to pollute. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying let's identify the sources of pollution. And when we can show 80% of air pollution sources and plastic sources into the ocean come from the same area of the world, we need to figure out how to approach that. Obviously, direct action is impossible. No one's invading another country because some guy threw out his coffee cup. But what we do need is a way to address these nations and say, okay, we gave you your chance. Now it's time to join the 21st century economy. And the time is now. I am not the pessimist that's like, oh my God, we need to do this now or future generations are going to be impacted. No, it takes quite a long time for the earth to warm up and cool down. I think 200 years from now it might be a problem, and I'm willing to make as many sacrifices as I can today to make sure that they have a slightly nicer life. But here and today, most people are doing what they're told to do. We know which people aren't, and confess it. If you can't do this in an apartment building, I don't think. But when it comes to your average street, you can look out and see who never puts out their recycling. They only put out their garbage, or if they put out stuff at all, depending. We have an alternating garbage day system. So, and if they're not bothering to put something out, you can tell right away what's going on. We need to figure out who the people are that are choosing not to participate and make it worth their while to participate. Putting the 5-cent bottle tax back in would be wonderful because you pay your 5-cent deposit and you take your deposit back and you get your 5 cents. The liquor stores, well, the beer stores around here do that. And you know what? It's one of these rites of passage. And I remember my father used to get his beer, drink it on the weekend. When he did, he wasn't really a heavy drinker. And then we'd take the empties back, and then he'd give that pocket change to me. Now, back in the 80s, which is what I'm talking about, $2-3 was a hell of a lot of spending money. And it still is. My kid has only just found out about it, and she wanted to start taking this stuff back. And my wife was willing to let her and said, no, 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 she's not of age. And a lot of places will say, nope, you're a child, we can't refund your beer to you. The important thing is she's at least interested in taking it back. So why can't we do that with pop bottles? Probably those paper cups from Tim Hortons and Starbucks and places like that, they could probably stand to do with the same treatment too, because I know people that rack up 3 or 4 of those a day. That's 30-40 cents. Hey, in a week, you got yourself a free coffee. So we need to figure out more solutions, stuff that worked in the past, new stuff that's going to interest people in participating. And let's get these countries that are way above average on pollution to buy into the system and show them how it's so much better. Now, of course, this costs money. I'm not delusional. And even if you try to make it a neutral system where you put 5 cents in, you get 5 cents out, the sad part is it still costs somebody money to set it up. And I can tell you there's not a lot of money in recycled bottles. One customer I used to have, that was literally their entire business. And while they're still in business, I can tell you that that's more by the skill of the people involved in negotiating contracts than it is anything that they're doing having an intrinsic worth. Maybe that's something we can talk about another time. So with that, we wish to thank you for joining us on the Silverlight Show today. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, because sharing is caring. Don't forget to click the subscribe button because, if you haven't subscribed already, there's a bell icon down below this which will inform you every time we release a new episode. And we hope you have a fantastic day.